Hey folks, Andy here. I do hope you're well. Right, I was watching a YouTube video just recently that was talking about different voicings of amps, and it was saying that British voiced amps use EL34s and American voiced amps use 6L6s, or EL84s and 6V6s, which are like the small siblings of these things. Many years ago, I remember trying to get an EL34 powered amp to sound like my Marshall. Couldn't do it and came away with the conclusion that it's actually more about the transformer and the circuits than it is the tubes. But just recently, I fired up my THD bivalve, which is an amp where you can freely swap the glassware in and out, and couldn't get it to sound right at all. Could not get it to sound the way I wanted it to. Eventually realised that I'd actually got a set of 6L6s in it instead of EL34s. And that got me thinking, maybe I've been a little bit wrong all these years. So, while I've got an amp that you can easily swap valves in and out of, I'm going to do a little experiment. I'm going to record a loop play it into the amp, take the output from the amp into a serial-reactive load, run that into Cubase and record it. I'm going to do it with the EL34s in and with the 6L6s in, with the amp both turned up loud and turned down so that we're getting the amps really pushed and maybe having a little bit of an easier time of it, just to see what they're doing in different parts of their sort of response curves. Okay, so let's take a look and a listen at what we've got. Now, bearing in mind that these recordings were taken straight out of the amp, so there's no speaker on there. So we're going to need to add something in to make them sound right. And what I've done is I've put a copy of Celestion Speaker Mix Pro running a greenback 412 cabinet mic with an SM57 out on a bus that I'm routing the audio channels through. So that's the only plug-in in use. There's no EQ, no compression, no reverb, nothing like that. So this is the sound of the EL34s with the level turned up on the amp. So we should be driving the output stage into some reasonable sort of saturation. And you can see where the levels are coming in here. Okay, and if I then just swap us over to the 6L6s again with the level turned up, exact same settings on the amp. And again we can see where the typical levels are coming up. And I'll just walk us down. These are the cleaner sounds. So lower level settings, EL34s. I have normalised the audio so we should hear them at about the same level, but you can hear the difference in the amount of drive on the sound. There's a lot less grind and drive on these, and the sound is a lot more dynamic as well. There's less of that natural sort of valve amp compression going on, which you can see in the levels as they move about a bit more. So if we now revisit those higher level recordings, and I'll chop between them so we can get an idea of how different or similar they are without interruptions in between. And then if we come down and do the same with the lower drive settings. So there you can make your own mind up about how significant or otherwise you think the difference between the tubes is. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to select both of the high gain ones, and I'm going to flip, invert, reverse the polarity of one of them. Yes, Cubase says phase, but it's really polarity. So anything that is identical on the two tracks will cancel out, and leave us hearing just the differences. And the reason that we can make this work is because the original recordings were done via the looper. We've got identical performances each time. So if we zoom in on the waveform and match these up to get them perfectly, or as perfectly as is reasonable, aligned. And then to simplify things as much as possible, to remove as many kind of random factors as we can, I'm going to hard bypass the Speaker Mix Pro plugin. So what we will hear will sound a little bit different. It'll just be the raw tracks with no speaker sim, but given that the objective here is to do the cancelling out test, that doesn't really matter. So as well as what the tracks sound like, let's also keep an eye on the levels. I'm going to start off with just one running, and then I will bring the other one in, and what we'll expect is that the levels will go down because of the amount of signal that's being cancelled. Now look at where those levels are. On the VU meter, we're down at around about -10. And on the Cubase RMS meter, we're looking at -28, -30. With peaks at around about -18. Whereas the individual tracks are going up to like +2, +3 on the VU, averaging around -16. So the cancelled sound is around about what, -15 dB on the individual tracks. And let's do the same thing with the lower drive settings. And again, a very noticeable degree of cancellation there. And in the region of -10, -20 on the VU, these signals are a lot more dynamic because of the non-compressed nature. Okay, so there you go. Now we've heard the actual difference. Was that as much, more, less than you thought it was going to be? Stick a comment down below, maybe, let me know. Any questions or queries related to guitar music tech, give me a shout. I'll be happy to see if I can answer them. If this is useful to you, maybe give us a thumbs up. That would be most excellent. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified when the next opus comes along. Look after yourselves. I'm Andy Picker. I'll see you next time.